Welcome to With Creative Company,
a podcast where we dive deep in all things business as creatives.
We give our personal take on things that actually move the needle,
and also chat with entrepreneurs about their experiences in running a business.
I'm Jordan.
I'm Mayme.
Let's get creative. Hello, hello.
Hi.
Here we are.
Yes, we're here again.
What are we talking about today?
Sorry, my intros are always so awkward. I got to work on this.
Do you want to redo?
No, this is great. I got to work on it if we're going to keep going. So today, Jordan, we are talking about a topic I'm excited about. I think.
She said maybe.
Which is the concept of, should business owners underpromise and overdeliver? Or is that like outdated bad advice?
I just feel like it has to be understood correctly, which is why we're going to break it down today.
Yes. I'm just going to go ahead and say, I think it's amazing advice. I've heard people say otherwise. I've heard like business advice that says that's not good. But I think if you do it correctly, it's amazing. And that's what we're going to talk about. So
I would agree with that statement. I would say it's a good thing to do, is like, you always, we'll go into this, but you always want to like be clear about what you're doing. But giving your clients a little extra something is always nice.
I also think this really varies depending on the business. If you're providing some form of service that is incredibly distinct and tangible, I do not think you should be like under-promising, over-delivering.
Yeah.
Like if you, I don't know, sew blankets to a certain size, there's really no way you can do that, excluding maybe your packaging being special.
Right.
A great example would be, there's like a small toy company that I like to order fond gifts from for like Christmas and her birthday. And one reason for that is because I placed an order with them. I know it's going to a small business instead of Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And then they send it to me and they put like a little handwritten note, like a thank you note and stickers. And it's very kind.
Yeah.
So like, that is a form of over delivery, but there's nothing else they could do.
Yeah.
You know, they can't.
They're not giving you another toy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think if you have a very tangible service, you can just disregard this whole episode and you can just say, I know exactly what I'm promising. I can provide special experiences within that. Otherwise, nothing.
Yeah.
I will say I also used to work for a corporate company, and one thing that they did was they always kind of underpromised on shipping times, which was really helpful because like they would say a max amount of days, and then it was typically the absolute max. So you would never really have people concerned about that.
Yeah.
They started shifting that towards the end of my job there. To where like we were giving people different, more accurate information.
Right.
And actually we received way more complaints because then people's expectations were this more accurate version. And if something was slightly late, it was like a huge issue. So,
I mean, it could, yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's go into a little bit more of like what that actually means of like under promising and over delivering and like why that might be important. For your business.
So I can give 2 examples for my business.
Perfect.
And then if you have any you want to share
I'll think of some.
So I have 2 different ways that I do this. One is, okay, as a photographer, pretty subjective. One is gallery count. As a photographer, I think I already deliver less images than a lot of people that I know. But for like a session, for like a 30-minute session, I only promise 20 to 25 plus images. And it's literally written that way. It's like 20 to 25 plus.
Yeah.
And I do that because then if I have a client that is more difficult to work with or who has a more complex situation, or we have a horrible like lighting setup or things go wrong, I know that I can get 20 to 25 images in there.
Right.
But for my average client, I'm going to deliver probably 40 or 50 images, which is still less than some other people I know. But then I have that flexibility. So then they get a gallery with like 40 or 50 images and they can be like, wow, I didn't expect this many.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a little bonus that they got, like a double the gallery. And So that's been very helpful for me, I feel like.
And in some ways it helps you too, because I think some of the hardest part is kind of culling those images down to a certain number. And sometimes it's almost easier for us to deliver a few more than spend the time in trying to decide, oh, this one or this one or this one, like it. So it kind of helps you out too.
Yes. No, I totally agree with that. And I do the same thing for weddings. Like I think for weddings, I promise about 55 to 60 plus images per hour, which at the end of the day, that's only like 500 or 600 images for an 8-hour wedding, but that's way less than what I typically actually deliver.
Yeah.
But it gives people like a number they can expect that they can adhere to. And then if I do have a wedding day, again, where situations are really complicated or where things are behind and I just don't get to photograph a lot of the things I would normally be documenting, there's still a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah.
I also do it in gallery delivery turnaround times. I used to not do that, and then it just makes it so hard to stay on top.
Yeah.
So for weddings, instead of 8 weeks, I do 8 to 10. And for sessions, instead of 2, I do 2 to 3. And then that just gives me some flexibility.
Yeah.
And then I basically always deliver at the 2-week or the 8-week, but I just know that the client's not even really anticipating it yet. Or they're not in their like fingers
panic
crossed,
mode. Yeah.
ready
Checking
phase.
their email every day.
And I do the same thing also for holidays. I never tell people, like, I had a lot of galleries that were due like after Thanksgiving, like Saturday or Sunday.
Yep.
But I didn't want to be working over Thanksgiving. So I pre-planned my whole work week to deliver all of that before I even left town for Thanksgiving. So all of those people got their galleries like a week ahead of time. But I didn't go out there and say, hey, you're going to get your gallery.
Exactly.
So for them, it was just like a fun little surprise. Yeah. And I think those are great examples of ways that I do that don't lower the value of the product I'm offering. It's not like I don't know, promising a 30-minute session and doing an hour or something.
Right.
It's not changing the value.
Yeah.
But it is making my life and my client's life like easier, and I feel like a little more calm.
And I think that's really nice because I think, you don't want to quote somebody a price for something and then give them that next tier, right?
Yes.
You don't want to devalue your company in any way. So I think that's important to keep in mind when you're thinking about ways to underpromise and overdeliver for your clients. And then I think also too, you have to know yourself, right? Because some of us might say 10 to 8 or 8 to 10 weeks and then mean the 10, And so I think that's like another thing too. It's like, look at your specific situation, know yourself, and come up with things that can bring value to your clients that that you can deliver on, because you don't want to do that. And then I think that's the hard part too. It's like you never want to overpromise to a client and then not make that, right?
Yeah.
I think I can't remember a vivid example, but I know in the past I have. And at the end, you're either just panicking or stressing out about something because you were like, well, I said I was going to do this and then you didn't, and all those things. So it takes a lot of self awareness.
Oh, I know, for sure. I mean, like I started my business in high school and I remember, I think I used to promise like 10 or 12 images from like a 30-minute session.
Yeah.
And I could barely get there. Like first of all, I was overthinking it, but also like, I shot way slower. I did things way differently. And it was so stressful for me. And then I remember like I would have senior sessions where I would be like going through like 4 times looking for one more image to put in the gallery. If you're there, you need to lower your image count that you're promising.
Yes.
Because you don't want to be in that place where you're like, what, do I include this? Is it horrible?
Right.
Is it horrible?
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. That is. And then on the flip side too, I feel like I was kind of the opposite. I feel like I delivered a lot more than I probably should have, which, like I was saying earlier, kind of maybe not devalues, but you're just, you're kind of giving away things for free at that point.
Yeah. And honestly, this is an unpopular but off-topic opinion.
Yeah.
Or I think it's unpopular. I think most wedding photographers way over-deliver galleries.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's just laziness because we don't want to cull more.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree. I've even had talks with clients about like them being like, I just don't really think I need that many images. And I've had to be kind of like, oh, let me revisit that and see what that looks like. And there's, you know, kind of industry standards, if you will, about how many images you can deliver per hour that you're shooting or things like that. But I think it would be really wise to listen to, I mean, if your clients are telling you these things, like listen to it. But also just like you were saying, like the intentionality of that too is really something special. And I think that it rolls over in photography when you're looking at a gallery, but also in any other business. Like you're always going to be more intentional about the things that you choose to include.
Well, and to be like respectful of your client's time too is really important. So I think there are probably bad ways that you could underpromise and overdeliver.
Ooh.
I would say those would be underpromising, maybe in ways that devalue your product and like take away from the amount that you can charge or from the bracket that your like client sees your business in. Does that make sense? So if you're, I don't know, I'm thinking, if you're underpromising maybe the content of your work in a way that is okay, if you're a photographer and you are promising only services and then you're including something tangible like prints.
Yeah.
You could see that as like you're giving your client a surprise, but unless you're making money off of that, in which case it's not really, it's booked in, they just don't know it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's helpful.
Right.
But if you're wanting to include prints, like a package of prints, then you include that in your deliverables.
Yeah.
Because then your client would see another tangible, valuable thing that you're including.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't love about that is when we refuse to take it out. I think a good example of that is, and this is pure your business preference, and you can have reasons for this. And if you have good reasons, that's awesome. But I have never loved it when people include an engagement session in a wedding package for photography.
Interesting.
And then won't adjust their price if the couple doesn't want it. Because it's kind of like this faux, it's a free service, but really the cost is built in.
Yeah.
Like you're making money off of it. Otherwise you wouldn't do it. So I feel like it brings more value to my engagement sessions to have the couple book them separately and know that they're paying for it and that they're paying for their wedding. It makes their wedding package look a little bit cheaper as well, which for my clientele works. Now, if you were trying to book like a more luxury client, you might not want your wedding package to look cheaper. You might want it to look more expensive. So then the engagement session can be great. But for me, what I do is I just offer a slight discount on the engagement session, which literally is a discount on the session. But it's because I know I'm going to make more money off that client later.
Yeah. Like if you do book the wedding, you get the engagement session at this price.
Yes.
That's
like
nice.
I offer a discount. And if you book the engagement session and then you book the wedding, I will apply the discount I would have implied to the engagement session to the wedding package.
Okay. Very cool.
So if it's like $100, it'll just come off the wedding instead of the engagement. But what that allows me to do is they know exactly what they're getting in their package.
Yeah.
So for my specific clientele, I feel like that's very helpful because they are the kind of people that would say, can I take the engagement session off? And then I would have to like go back in my pricing and refigure it out. And I've definitely spoken to photographers who are like, oh, I include this for free and no, you can't take it out. And I'm like, well, then it's not free. Like it's part of the package and you need it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I think like you were saying, like knowing your clientele and listening to them is so important. Cause ours include an engagement session. And I mean, I've had a few people ask about it, but I feel like it's never been like a make or break deal.
Well, and especially if you have clients, if you have a good reason for that, which
we do.
Which is probably you want to work with the client beforehand. I feel like a lot of clients are going to understand that. It's just like for my business, it's not as necessary.
And I love that.
So, which is why I'm applying all the little caveats of like, I'm not saying don't do this. I'm just saying for me, that would be a poor example for myself.
No, I love that. I think that's really, really great. And I think it's something too to think about, like we're saying, it's just something a little extra that kind of sets your business apart, right? Like we're talking about maybe smaller, but creative entrepreneurs, smaller businesses. And there is something special about doing business with one singular person instead of a whole conglomerate of people or companies and things like that. And I think that's like a really cool way that you can add value.
Yeah. And it's also just like, I'm a big fan. Like running a small business is so stressful and hard.
Amen.
So anything you can do that's going to relieve stress for you as the business owner to make your business still function well, I think is great.
And be good for your clients. Win-win.
So if you can do something where you have people asking you less questions or having lower expectations, and then you can surpass that and you know it's going to be easy for you to do.
Yeah.
But then you have that wiggle room of like, but if I can't, I've got this backup option.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's really, really, really helpful. So
it is.
That's really all I had to say. What do you got anything else there?
I don't know. I think that was really good.
Yeah.
I think we keep it short and sweet today.
Totally fine.
We're having a great time whenever this comes out.
Yes. I mean, I feel like this is probably a very bite-sized episode. But
that's okay.
We could opine longer, but it would probably just be meh. So.
Well, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram with Creative Company.
Well, I think on Instagram it's with .creative company.
Right, with .creative company.
Everything else will just be with Creative Company.
Yes. And thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.